The price of arrogance. He had it all, then discarded his pregnant wife for a younger lover. Now she's teaming up with his rival to build a new life and take everything he has. What happens when a man who has it all decides his pregnant wife is something he can simply discard? Prepare for a dizzying downfall that will leave you breathless. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. And of course, leave your comments with your first impressions. Michael Anderson, an ice-forged real estate tycoon, destroyed his perfect life and his wife, Clara Vance's, heart for a younger, dazzling lover. He thought he had won. He thought he had control. But he was about to discover the devastating truth. The only thing more dangerous than a woman scorned is a woman who finds her strength. When Clara not only survives, but begins to build a new life with his greatest rival, Michael's cold facade crumbles, unleashing an obsession that will destroy everything he has left. This is a story about the ultimate betrayal, one woman's incredible fight for redemption, and the explosive consequences for a powerful man who realizes he has lost everything. Part 1. The end of an era. The silence in her luxury penthouse on Oxford Street in London was a living entity. It breathed the sterile air circulated by a system Clara once admired, but now found suffocating. She clung to the vast glass panels that overlooked Hyde Park, a wide green carpet that seemed a million miles away. For 3 weeks, this silence had been her main company, a more constant presence than her husband, Michael Anderson. At 34, Michael was an industry titan, a man who didn't just enter rooms, he conquered them. His face, a collection of sharp, handsome angles, was a mask of calculated coldness that had adorned the covers of the Financial Times and The Economist. He moved with the predatory grace of a man who had never been told no. When his intense cobalt blue eyes first landed on Clara Vance, a quiet art historian with a love for dusty books and impressionist light, she felt like the most seen woman in the world. He pursued her with a singular focus that she mistook for devotion. It was only after they were married, after her signature was on the prenuptial agreement his lawyers had called a formality, that she realized it wasn't devotion. It was acquisition. Now, at 28, Clara was 3 months pregnant with their first child, a fact that had brought a glimpse of something illegible to Michael's eyes before the mask reappeared. She had hoped this would close the chasm opening between them, a silent, growing abyss filled with nights he excused as board meetings and a coldness in their bed that had nothing to do with the thermostat. He entered the living room, his custom-made Italian shoes making no sound on the polished marble floor. He had already showered and changed his work armor for a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than her first car. He didn't look at her, but walked to the climate-controlled wine cabinet. "We need to talk, Clara." His voice was calm, measured, the voice he used when closing a hostile takeover. Clara's hand instinctively went to her still flat belly. An icy knot formed in her chest. "I tried to talk to you last night, Michael. You got in after I fell asleep. I was busy." He selected a bottle of sparkling water, twisting the cap with a dry pop that made her flinch. He still hadn't turned to look at her. "This isn't working." The 4 words floated in the air, brutally simple. Clara's heart beat against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. "What? What's not working?" "The schedule? I can have dinner ready later. I just thought..." "Us." He finally turned, his eyes fixed on hers. There was no anger, no sadness, just a profound, frightening emptiness. "This marriage is over." The air left her body in a painful gasp. "What are you saying, Michael? I'm pregnant." Her voice was a whisper, a desperate plea for him to remember, to care. "I know," he said, taking a sip of water. "Arrangements will be made. The baby will be well cared for, of course. So will you. I'm not a monster." The distant cruelty of his words was more painful than any screaming argument. He was disinvesting, cutting his losses. She was a failed investment. "A monster?" she repeated, a hysterical laugh bubbling in her throat. "You're talking about our baby, our marriage, as if it were a line on a balance sheet." A flicker of annoyance crossed his face for the first time. "The other person, right? Her name is Valeria Santos, and yes, it's serious." The name hit Clara with the force of a physical blow. An Instagram model and socialite she'd seen on gossip sites, often at the same charity galas Michael attended alone. Clara had told herself it was nothing. Michael had assured her it was nothing. The casual way he said her name now, the final possessiveness of "it's serious," told Clara that it had been everything. "So that's it?" Clara stood up. Her legs were shaking. "You bring this girl into our lives, and I'm just supposed to disappear, with your child inside me?" "I would prefer there to be no drama," Michael said, his voice lowering to a warning tone. "My lawyers will be in touch tomorrow. They've drafted a generous severance package. Consider it a bonus for your time at the company." He actually used those words. Severance package. The insult was so profound, so dehumanizing, that something broke inside her. The fear receded, replaced by a wave of white-hot rage. "The company? Is that all I was to you, Michael? An employee of Anderson Holdings? You were my wife. The position is no longer available." He placed the water bottle on the marble counter with a dry snap. "I've arranged for you to stay at the Dorchester for a few weeks until you find a more permanent arrangement. Valeria is moving in this weekend. It's best if you're gone by tomorrow night." He was evicting her. From her home. From her life. The power imbalance was stunning. Absolute. He held all the cards. The money. The lawyers. The house. He had systematically isolated her from her old life, her old friends, until he was the sun around which her world revolved. And now, he was extinguishing the light. "No," she said, the word sounding strange and powerful on her tongue. Michael raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "No, I won't discuss my life or my child's life with your lawyers. I won't be packed up and sent to a hotel like last season's luggage. You want a divorce, Michael? You'll have to go through me, not your legal department." He studied her, a flicker of surprise in his cold eyes. He expected tears, begging, a quick and orderly breakdown. He did not expect defiance. A slow, chilling smile touched his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. "Very well, Clara," he said softly. "But you need to understand one thing. When I want something, I get it. And when I want something to disappear, it disappears. Have your little moment of defiance, but don't forget who you're dealing with." He turned and walked out of the room, leaving Clara alone in the cavernous silence. The icy knot in her chest had spread, chilling her to the bone. He wasn't just leaving her, he was erasing her. And as her hand trembled over the slight curve of her belly, she knew this wasn't just a divorce. It was a war for her survival, and for the survival of the only pure thing she had left. Do you think Clara has a chance against Michael? Leave us your opinion in the comments. Part 2. The first steps. The next 24 hours were a blur of calculated cruelty. By morning, Clara's access to their joint accounts was frozen. An abrupt email from Michael's personal assistant informed her that a moving service would arrive at 2 p.m. to pack her personal belongings and transport them to a storage unit. The key to the penthouse would be deactivated at 6 p.m. sharp. He was dismantling her life with the efficiency of a corporate restructuring. Her best friend, Sarah Jones, a fiery redhead and rising theater actress who had never trusted Michael, arrived within the hour, her arms full of coffee and righteous fury. "The son of a—" Sarah hissed, pacing the enormous closet as Clara pointed to clothing with detached indifference. "A literal severance package. He thinks he's God? He thinks he's Michael Anderson," Clara said in a hollow voice. To him, it's the same thing. Packing was a surreal experience. That dress, bought for a gala where Michael had ignored her all night. Those shoes, a thoughtful gift after he had missed her birthday. Each item was a ghost, a reminder of a love she now realized had been a meticulously crafted illusion. The movers, two burly men who refused to look at her, worked with a silent, grim efficiency that made it seem as if they were packing the belongings of a dead person. By 5 o'clock, Clara was standing on Oxford Street with 2 suitcases, her handbag, and a check that Sarah had pressed into her hand. The doorman, who had greeted her with a deferential Mrs. Anderson for 3 years, now looked right through her. Her key was just a useless piece of metal. She was officially an exile. Sarah took her to her small, cluttered but warm apartment in Notting Hill. It was a 5th-floor walk-up that smelled of old books and fresh tea, a world away from the sterile, odorless air of the penthouse. For the first week, Clara barely left the guest room. She slept, she cried, and she stared at the ceiling. The psychological whiplash left her nauseous and dizzy. The morning sickness was a cruel, constant reminder of the baby Michael had referred to as an arrangement. Her first communication from Michael's legal team was a thick, intimidating packet of documents. The terms were brutally clear. In exchange for signing an unbreakable NDA and agreeing to a quick, unopposed divorce, she would receive a one-time payment. The custody agreement for the unborn child was detailed with chilling precision. Michael would be granted exclusive legal custody, and Clara would be granted supervised visitation rights at his discretion. They were trying to buy her son. "He can't do that," Sarah fumed, throwing the papers onto her coffee table. "This is insane. He's trying to intimidate you into just disappearing." "It's not intimidation," Clara said. A deadly calm had settled over her. "It's strategy." That was the moment the embers of her old self, the sharp, analytical mind of the historian, began to glow. She had spent years studying the strategies of kings and conquerors. Michael was no different. He was using overwhelming force to ensure a quick and unconditional surrender. And she wouldn't give it to him. With Sarah's help, she found a small, fiercely intelligent family law attorney named Sophia Cruz. Sophia, a woman whose stylish suits and even sharper mind commanded respect, read the proposed agreement. Her expression grew stormier with each page. "This isn't a settlement, Ms. Vance," Sophia said in a voice of steel. "This is a declaration of war. Mr. Anderson is used to people ceding. We are not going to cede." The first step was survival. Sarah's check wouldn't last forever. Clara began selling the jewelry Michael had bought her, the consolation prizes, the guilt gifts. Each transaction felt like shedding a layer of fake skin. With the money, she rented a small one-bedroom flat in a modest building in Mayfair. It was Spartan, with second-hand furniture and walls in need of paint. But it was hers. On a rainy Tuesday, feeling a desperate need for air, she found herself wandering through the small, independent art galleries that dotted the neighborhood. The silent reverence of the spaces calmed her nerves. In one gallery, a collection of raw, powerful photographs of urban decay caught her eye. She was so engrossed in one particular piece, a photo of a single, resilient weed growing through a crack in a concrete monolith, that she didn't notice the man who had stopped beside her. "It's incredible, isn't it?" a deep voice said. "How life finds a way." Clara turned. The man was tall and lean, with dark, thoughtful eyes and a shadow of a beard. He wore a well-cut but understated gray suit. There was a quiet intensity about him that was captivating. "Yes," she nodded, turning back to the photo. "It's defiant." "An apt word," he said, gesturing to the photograph. "Most people see decay. You see defiance." He smiled, a genuine, warm expression that was a startling contrast to Michael's cold smirks. I'm Ethan Walker. The name startled her. Ethan Walker, the CEO of Walker Developments. He was Michael's most significant and bitter rival. They were polar opposites in the business world. Michael was known for hostile takeovers and ruthless layoffs. Ethan was known for sustainable projects and a reputation for integrity. Their enmity was the stuff of financial legend. Michael despised him with a passion that bordered on the pathological. Clara's guard shot up instantly. "Clara Vance," she said, her tone colder than intended. Ethan's eyes widened in recognition. It wasn't her name he recognized, but her face. He had seen her in photos, arm in arm with Michael Anderson. A ghost of a pained expression crossed his face. He knew who she was, and likely what had happened. The gossip machine of London's elite was mercilessly efficient. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft with what sounded like genuine sympathy. "For what it's worth, I saw his work up close. No one deserves that." Clara flinched. She didn't want his pity. "I don't know what you're talking about." He didn't press. He simply nodded, his gaze returning to the photograph. "Well, Ms. Vance, it was a pleasure to meet you." He gave her another small, respectful smile and walked away, leaving Clara with a strange mixture of suspicion and an unbidden glimpse of warmth. He hadn't been predatory or invasive. He had been kind. Do you believe Ethan has hidden intentions, or is he a genuine, unexpected ally? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Part 3. The Alliance. Meanwhile, Michael was discovering that his life with Valeria was not the perfect upgrade he had anticipated. The penthouse, once a silent sanctuary of his control, was now filled with the chaos of Valeria's world. Her friends, vapid and loud, were a constant presence. The silence he craved was replaced by the incessant click of her phone camera as she documented every moment of their new, luxurious life for her followers. She was beautiful, exciting, and completely captivated by him. But he found her adoration cloying, her conversation shallow. He had won, but the prize felt empty. He had expected Clara to fall apart, to take the money and disappear, a footnote in his biography. Instead, his lawyers reported that she had retained an attorney. She was fighting back. He saw paparazzi photos of her, looking pale and thin, but undeniably resolute, walking into a lawyer's office. One night, a photo from a society blog popped up on his feed. It was from the gallery opening. A candid shot showed Clara, her hand resting on her pregnant belly, talking to Ethan Walker. They weren't touching. They weren't even particularly close. But they were sharing a space, a moment. A nauseating, unfamiliar sensation roiled in Michael's stomach. It was hot, sour, and it tasted like poison. It was jealousy. It was possession. How dare she? How dare he? She was still Michael Anderson. She was carrying his child. The sight of her, in the same frame as his most hated rival, was a personal and intolerable affront. He grabbed his phone and called his head of security. "I want to know everything about her new life," he ordered, his voice a low growl. "Where she goes, who she sees. Everything. And I want leverage on Walker. Find it. I don't care what it costs." He had tried to erase her with indifference. Now he would erase her with his power. The game had changed. It was no longer a quiet divorce. It was about total, complete destruction. Life in Mayfair was a study in contrasts for Clara. The loss of immense wealth was less jarring than the return of autonomy. She learned the rhythms of the underground, the names of the shopkeepers at the local market, the simple joy of buying a coffee without it being debited from a faceless corporate account. It was a smaller life, but it was deep and entirely her own. The legal battle was a slow, exhausting war of attrition. Michael's lawyers filed a barrage of motions, demanding exhaustive financial disclosures from her pre-marriage life and attempting to paint her as an unstable gold digger. Sophia Cruz was a bulldog, countering every move with meticulous and unshakable professionalism. "He's trying to destroy you emotionally," Sophia said during an exhaustive strategy session. "Don't let him." Clara's second meeting with Ethan Walker was as unexpected as the first. She was in a small, independent bookstore, running her hand along the spines of art history texts when he said her name. She turned, startled. He held a biography of the architect Zaha Hadid. He looked less formal today, in dark jeans and a simple, well-fitting shirt. "Ms. Vance?" "Ethan, please," he insisted, a soft smile in his eyes. He gestured with the book. "A fan of Hadid?" "I am," she admitted. "I did my master's thesis on her use of light." A look of genuine delight spread across his face. "Ah, the light. It's a religious experience." For the next 20 minutes, they forgot who they were. The abandoned wife, the corporate rival, and they became two people who were passionate about architectural theory. He spoke with a captivating passion and intelligence. He wasn't just a developer building glass towers. He was a man who understood the soul of a building. "I'm having a small dinner on Friday," he said as they stood by the door. "This will sound forward, and please feel free to say no. A few friends, architects, artists, something low-key. I think you'd find them interesting. No ulterior motives, I promise. Just good conversation." Clara hesitated. Every one of her instincts, honed by years of Michael's manipulations, screamed at her to be suspicious. Why was he being so kind? But another, calmer voice, the one that was tired of being afraid, urged her to say yes. She was lonely. She missed being around people who shared her passions. "I'd like that," she said, surprising herself. The dinner was at his loft in the Mayfair district, a stunning space filled with books, art, and warm, reclaimed wood. It was the antithesis of Michael's penthouse, a home, not a showroom. The guests were warm, engaging, and blissfully unconcerned with Michael Anderson. For the first time in months, Clara felt like herself again. Not the discarded wife, but Clara Vance, the art historian. She and Ethan talked for an uninterrupted hour. He told her about his beginnings, how he had worked his way up from a small construction company. His vision had always centered on creating spaces that served communities, not just egos. He listened, truly listened, as she talked about her abandoned career, the passion she still felt for it. "You should be working in this field," he said, his expression serious. "You have a brilliant eye. Have you ever considered art consulting for architectural firms, curating the spaces they build?" "I wouldn't even know where to start," she confessed. "You start by building a portfolio," he said simply. "Offer your services pro bono to a small firm on a notable project. Build your name." He paused. "A friend of mine is leading a new community library project in the Hackney neighborhood. They have a very tight budget for acquisitions. They could use someone with your eye to help them source affordable, meaningful pieces from local artists." It wasn't a handout. It was a door, cracked slightly ajar. It was a sign of respect for her talent, something she hadn't felt in years. Tears pricked her eyes. "Thank you, Ethan. That means a lot." Their relationship grew slowly, organically, from that night. They met for coffee to discuss the library project. He sent her articles about new exhibitions. She found herself looking forward to his messages, to his calm, steady presence. He never spoke ill of Michael. He never pried into the details of her divorce. His focus was always on her future. The library project became her lifeline. She threw herself into it, hunting through student exhibitions and small galleries, meeting with young, hungry artists. She was good at it. She was negotiating deals, curating a collection, bringing a space to life. She was building something, right as Michael was trying to tear her down. The slow change in her was palpable. The fear that had been her constant companion began to recede, replaced by a nascent confidence. Her body was changing. The gentle swelling of her pregnancy was now a visible, reassuring curve. She was creating life in more ways than one. Michael, accustomed to hour-by-hour updates from his security team, watched this evolution with a growing sense of rage. He saw photos of Clara, her face animated and happy, leaving the library site in Hackney. He saw her sharing a laugh with Ethan Walker over coffee. The narrative he had constructed in his mind, the pathetic, broken wife, was being rewritten in front of him. And he was not the author. His obsession, once a cold, calculated strategy, was becoming a hot, consuming fire. He saw Ethan not just as a business rival, but as a thief, stealing what was rightfully his. Not Clara, the woman, but the idea of her, the mother of his heir, a possession of Michael Anderson. Seeing her prosper without him, and worse, with Walker's help, was an intolerable narcissistic wound. The legal tactics intensified. His lawyers filed a motion for an emergency hearing, claiming that Clara's unstable living situation and her questionable associations posed a risk to the unborn child. It was a thinly veiled attack on her friendship with Ethan. Michael's life with Valeria was deteriorating rapidly. Her constant need for public validation irritated him. He would come home looking for a sanctuary and find her in the middle of a live stream, pouting for her followers. One night, she confronted him, her voice shrill. "People are talking, Michael. They're posting photos of her with him. It's humiliating. Why haven't you crushed her yet? You promised you would handle this." "I am handling this," he snapped back, the pressure in his skull mounting. "It doesn't look like it," she screamed. "It looks like she's winning, and you look weak." The word weak touched a raw nerve deep in his soul, the one place where his father's corrosive voice still echoed. He looked at Valeria, at her perfectly sculpted face, and for the first time felt nothing but contempt. He had traded a diamond for a piece of glitter, and the glitter was starting to look cheap. Clara had been real, and he had discarded her for this. Valeria's fear and jealousy had become a poisonous thing. She saw Clara not just as a rival for Michael's affection, but as the wrecking ball for her carefully constructed future. If Michael's empire crumbled, so would hers. She had climbed from humble beginnings, she hid from everyone, and she would not go back. She decided to take matters into her own hands. She found Clara's address. One afternoon, she appeared at the door of the Mayfair apartment, dressed in an impossibly expensive outfit, her face a mask of false concern. Clara opened the door, her heart clenched. "Valeria, what do you want?" "I'm worried about you, Clara," Valeria began, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. "And I'm worried about Michael. This war between you is destroying him." "This war was declared by him," Clara said coldly, without inviting her in. "But you keep fighting," Valeria pressed, her eyes flashing. "You and Ethan Walker, do you have any idea what you're doing? You're making Michael look weak, and that's the one thing he can't tolerate. He will ruin you. He will ruin Walker. He will burn everything to the ground before he loses." "Is that a threat?" Valeria's facade broke. A sneer twisted her perfect lips. "It's a fact. You think you're so virtuous, don't you? The poor, abandoned wife. But you're not as innocent as you seem. I know you were planting doubts about me long before I ever showed up. I know you were playing the victim so he'd feel guilty." Clara looked at her, perplexed. "What are you talking about? I never did that." "Oh, please," Valeria scoffed. "Don't play dumb. You think you can have him back? He doesn't want you. He's only doing this because his ego is bruised. Just leave him alone. Disappear. Take the money and go. It's for the best, especially for your baby." The confrontation was bewildering. Valeria's accusations made no sense, but it was also revealing. Valeria was not a confident winner. She was terrified. She was standing on a trap door, and she knew it. The exchange, however, had been observed. A man in a car parked across the street had filmed the entire thing on his phone. He was a private investigator. But he didn't work for Michael. He worked for Ethan. After Michael's motion, Ethan had, with great reluctance, hired a discreet firm to follow Valeria, suspecting she was more than just a passive player in Michael's cruelty. He needed to protect Clara from all angles. That night, Ethan watched the video. He saw Valeria's desperation. He heard her strange, unfounded accusations. Something wasn't adding up. On a hunch, he had the investigator do a deep dive, not just into Valeria Santos, the model, but into who she was before. What he found was the hidden motive, the secret that fueled her entire existence. And it was the key that would unlock the prison Michael had built for himself and make his carefully constructed world come crashing down. Do you think this new love between Clara and Ethan can withstand Michael's fury? Share your predictions in the comments. Part 4. The Final Act. The day of the custody hearing dawned gray and oppressive. The sky over London, the color of a blackboard. The courtroom was a cold, wood-paneled box designed to intimidate and diminish. Clara sat next to Sophia Cruz, her back straight, her hands clasped tightly over her 6-month pregnant belly. Ethan sat 2 rows behind her, a silent, solid presence. Michael sat at the opposing table, flanked by a team of 3 lawyers. He looked impeccable in a dark, severe suit, his face an unreadable stone mask. He refused to look at Clara, his gaze fixed on the empty judge's bench. He radiated an aura of immense, unshakable power. The hearing began, and Michael's lead counsel, a wily, silver-haired man named Leo Thompson, went on the attack. He painted a picture of Clara's life as one of instability, citing her move to a less-than-safe neighborhood and her unwise association with a man known to have a vendetta against Mr. Anderson. He was weaving a fiction of recklessness, and with every word, Clara felt her reality slipping away. Then, Sophia Cruz stood to speak. "Your Honor," she began, her voice calm and clear, "we are not here today because of my client's instability. We are here because of Mr. Anderson's obsession." Sophia systematically dismantled his case. She presented Clara's rental agreement, her prenatal records, glowing letters of recommendation from the library's board. She presented a detailed report from a child psychologist who had evaluated Clara and found her remarkably resilient and eminently prepared for motherhood. Then she played her trump card. "Your Honor, the petitioner claims that my client's association with Mr. Ethan Walker is a source of instability. I would argue that it is Mr. Anderson's reaction to this friendship that is the true cause for concern." She turned to Michael's table. "Mr. Thompson, is your client aware that his companion, Ms. Valeria Santos, visited my client's home 2 days ago?" A flicker of surprise in Michael's eyes. He shot a look at Valeria, who was sitting in the front row, suddenly pale. "And is he aware?" Sophia continued, her voice rising. "That Ms. Santos threatened my client? We have a sworn statement from a witness." Thompson objected, but the judge, her interest now fully piqued, allowed it. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. The first crack had appeared in Michael's monolithic facade, but Ethan knew it wasn't enough. Michael could dismiss Valeria's actions as those of a jealous woman. He had to detonate the truth. During a brief recess, he approached Sophia and Clara, his face grim. He held a thin folder. "There's something you need to see," he said. "It explains everything." He laid out his investigator's findings. Valeria Santos was born Vera Kozlov. Her father, a small-time contractor in Plymouth, had been driven into bankruptcy and despair a decade earlier after his company was deliberately crushed in a hostile takeover. The man who orchestrated that takeover, who saw a small competitor and decided to extinguish it for sport, was a young and relentlessly ambitious Michael Anderson. Vera's father had taken his own life 6 months later. Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a long-term plan of revenge. She didn't meet Michael at a gala, Ethan explained, his voice low and urgent. She targeted him. She studied him. She spent 2 years maneuvering her way into his orbit. She learned his weaknesses, his ego, his rivalry with me. She probably planted lies about you, Clara, fanning the flames of his insecurity to push him into her arms. This was never love. This was revenge. She wanted to become his wife, secure her future, and then destroy him from the inside, just like he destroyed her family. The pieces clicked into place with a nauseating clarity. Valeria's strange accusations, her desperation, her intimate knowledge of how to manipulate Michael's ego. Michael, returning to the courtroom, saw the three of them huddled together. He saw the folder in Ethan's hand, and a cold dread, an emotion he hadn't felt since childhood, began to seep into his bones. When the hearing resumed, Sophia Cruz requested permission to call a surprise witness to the stand, Valeria Santos. Panic lit up Valeria's eyes. She tried to refuse, but the judge, her curiosity now fully engaged, compelled her. On the stand, under Sophia's sharp questioning, Valeria's composure crumbled. The lies unraveled. When Sophia presented a copy of her father's bankruptcy filing, with Michael's signature on the acquisition papers, Valeria broke completely. "He deserved it," she sobbed. The words poured out, raw, and filled with a decade of hate. She looked directly at Michael, her face a mess of tears and smudged mascara. "He took everything from us. He smiled as he ruined my father. I was going to take everything from you, Michael. Your company, your name, your son. I was going to make you feel what it was like to have nothing." A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Every camera, every eye turned to Michael. His mask didn't just crack, it shattered. The revelation was a catastrophic blow. He looked at Valeria, this woman he had chosen, and saw not a prize, but a viper he had willingly taken into his bed. He saw the last year of his life not as a series of choices he had made, but as a script written by the vengeful daughter of a man he barely remembered ruining. His betrayal of Clara wasn't even his own idea. It was a symptom of his own vanity, expertly manipulated. The power he cherished, the control he wielded with such arrogance, was an illusion. He had been a puppet. He looked at Clara. He looked at her truly for the first time in a year. He saw the woman he had loved, the quiet strength he had so cruelly judged, the life they were meant to have. He saw the swelling of her belly, which held a child born of a love he had murdered. And he saw her sitting next to Ethan Walker, a man who had shown her the respect and kindness he had been incapable of. The judge's voice was a distant hum. The lawyer's words were meaningless noise. The entire basis of Michael's identity, the master of the universe, the man in control, had been pulverized. He had lost everything. Not his money, not his company. But the one thing he now realized was priceless. Genuine human connection. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He didn't say a word. He simply turned and walked out of the courtroom, his shoulders, for the first time in his life, hunched in defeat. He pushed his way through the crowd of reporters, his face a ghostly white. He had walked into the courtroom as a king demanding his property. He walked out as a hollow man, haunted by the ruins of a life he had so stupidly destroyed. The moment of truth had arrived, not from a rival or a market crash, but from the ghosts of his own cruelty. Part 5. The True Measure of Wealth, The outcome of the hearing was a silent implosion. The case was dismissed, Michael's petitions withdrawn with a brief, one-line email from a junior lawyer at his firm. The story, however, exploded. The tale of the cold billionaire, his vengeful mistress, and the resilient wife became the talk of London. But for the first time, the narrative centered not on Michael's power or Valeria's deceit, but on Clara's quiet dignity. Michael disappeared from public view. He retreated to his silent penthouse. But the silence was different now. It was no longer a symbol of his control, but a reflection of his emptiness. Valeria was gone. Her name and face vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind only the wreckage of her long-dormant revenge. Michael was alone with the rubble of his life. He didn't fight the divorce. The papers were signed without objection. Everything Clara and Sophia asked for was granted. Full legal and physical custody of the baby, a generous and unconditional alimony trust, and the formal transfer of a significant portion of his liquid assets to her. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a penance. 3 months later, Clara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Phoenix, but his nickname was Nix. He had her warm brown eyes and a shock of stubborn dark hair. Holding him in her arms in the quiet hospital room, Clara felt a sense of peace so profound it felt sacred. The war was over. Her new life had begun. Ethan was there. He had been there for the last months of her pregnancy, a calm, steady source of strength and love. He held Nix with a tenderness that made Clara's heart ache with a fierce, protective joy. Their love story had not been forged in ballrooms and candlelit dinners, but in the trenches of a bitter legal war and the shared project of rebuilding a life. It was stronger because of it. 6 months after Nix's birth, Clara received an unexpected email. It was from Michael. It was short, stripped of his usual corporate jargon, and surprisingly direct. Clara, I know there are no words that can undo the wrong I did. I was a fool, blinded by an arrogance I mistook for strength. I betrayed you, and I betrayed our son before he was born. I expect nothing from you, not forgiveness, not a second chance, but I would like to be a father to Nix. Not a provider, not a name on a trust fund, but a father. I have started therapy. I am trying to understand the man I became and to become a better one. If you would ever be willing to allow it, I would like to see him. The terms would be entirely yours. Michael. Clara read the email several times. The old Michael would have sent a demand through his lawyers. This message was different. It was stripped of ego. It was the sound of a man who had finally hit rock bottom and was beginning the slow, painful climb out. She talked about it with Ethan. His response was, as always, measured and supportive. Nix deserves a father, he said. If Michael is truly willing to do the work to be a good one, that's a gift to your son. But the choice is yours, Clara. You're in control now. She agreed to a meeting in a public park on a crisp autumn afternoon. Michael looked different. He had lost weight. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hesitant uncertainty. He didn't try to touch Nix at first. He just looked at him, his eyes filled with a universe of regret. That was the beginning of Michael's redemption. It was not a grand cinematic arc. It was a slow, painful, and private process. It was supervised, awkward visits in the park. It was him learning how to hold his son, how to change a diaper, how to exist in a room without trying to dominate it. He sold the penthouse, moving into a smaller, more human-scaled apartment. He stepped down as CEO of Anderson Holdings, taking on a less public board role. He was dismantling the monument he had built to his own ego, stone by stone. He never got Clara back, and he never tried. He saw the easy, genuine love between her and Ethan. He saw the stable, happy home they were building for Nix. He realized, with a clarity that was both painful and liberating, that he had forfeited his right to that life. His redemption wasn't about reclaiming what he had lost, but about honoring it from a distance. It was about becoming a man worthy of being Nix's father. 2 years later, Clara, Ethan, and a laughing, babbling Nix were feeding ducks at the lake in Hyde Park. It was a perfect Sunday. Clara, now a highly sought-after art consultant with her own small, successful firm, felt a sense of contentment so profound it was like sunlight warming her from the inside. Across the lake, partially hidden by a weeping willow, Michael watched them. He wasn't spying. He was just observing. He saw his son, happy and loved. He saw the woman he had discarded, radiant and thriving. A sharp pang of his colossal loss hit him, as it always did. But this time, it was followed by something more. A quiet sense of gratitude. Gratitude that they were okay. Gratitude that despite his best efforts to destroy her, this beautiful life existed. He gave a small, sad, and accepting smile. He had been a cold billionaire who had lost everything. But in losing, he had found a bit of his humanity. He turned and walked away. Not a titan of industry, but just a man who finally understood the true measure of wealth. And so, Michael Anderson learned the hardest lesson of all. You cannot put a price on a human heart. Clara's journey, from the depths of betrayal to a life filled with genuine love and purpose, is a powerful reminder that our greatest strength is often forged in our deepest pain. This was not just a story about a rich man's downfall. It was about one woman's incredible rise. It shows that true power is not about control or wealth, but about resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to build a new life from the ashes of the old. If this story of heartbreak, resilience, and redemption moved you, please like this video and share it with someone who appreciates a story with true emotional depth. And for more gripping romance and dramatic tales that explore the complexities of the human heart, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell.